All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is Thursday, Thursday, February 6th, 2025. Amazing. It's good that the year is right there on that calendar. I'd probably forget, get it wrong. It takes a while for me to transition from once there's a all right, 240-242-5646. Hope you'll join me today. I would really like to talk to you. And I'm going to put that poll up right now just to start the ball rolling. Democrats obviously not doing particularly well with voters. And their response to me seems remarkably, self-defeating. I think I used the term shooting themselves in the head to characterize the way this party is responding to the fact that they just cannot win over more than about a third of the voters at this point, and they're significantly behind Trump. It really is astonishing. This is a poll dated last week, January 29. So you might say, well, it's old, right? I mean, now Trump's talking about taking over Gaza and ethnic cleansing. There are threats now of a potential impeachment. So probably all of that is going to hurt Trump and help Democrats. That was one comment actually I got online in response to my criticism of that specific threat by Democrats to impeach, at least by two Democrats. Two Democrats have used the I word, and the response was, hey, now they're fighting back. This is what you hear also in support of AOC. She's fighting back. She calls him a rapist, so she's fighting back. She calls Trump a rapist as though that's going to move the needle. And obviously it's not. I mean, Democrats have used every term in the book to attack Trump, and it doesn't work. It's not how you win. You win voters over by proposing pro-people legislation, by pushing and believing in and being genuine and authentic in your support for working class people. That's how you can win. That is how Democrats would win if they tried. But they don't try. Tomorrow, I was going today, actually, the plan had been this morning I would go see one of my least favorite politicians, somebody I have great contempt for, to be perfectly honest, Jamie Raskin. I don't know if any of his people monitor my program. I don't think I'm on their radar, unfortunately. I wish I was. But the breakfast was postponed today because of sleet, rain, and I think it was a good move. The roads are somewhat slick here in Maryland, so let's keep people off the streets, at least for a day. It'll be tomorrow. So I'm going to go, and I did submit some questions. I hope one or more will be answered. Generally, Raskin, or let me put it differently, the guests at this breakfast club, and I have mentioned this before, maybe you've seen clips I've presented of it. They have really good, really big name people, including Chris Van Hollen, my county council member, Kate Stewart, and both of them answered questions that were directly posed by people who were at the meeting. If you go to that meeting, the general understanding is, the breakfast meeting, if you go, the general understanding here in District 18 of Maryland is that you can ask a question, and the host of the event, Susan, will walk around the room with a microphone, Susan Heltemus, and you get to ask your question. And it's great. That's democracy. That is truly petitioning your government for redress, right? You're going to your leader, your representative, and you're saying, hey, this is my concern. What are you going to do about this? This is my concern. How come you did this? That's democracy. That's the true spirit of public control over our government, at least holding them accountable. Imagine my lack of surprise but massive disappointment when I learned that Raskin is bucking that longtime procedure for the District 18 Breakfast Club meetings. He is requiring questions to be submitted in advance with a gatekeeper. Now, I don't know if the gatekeeper is going to do much keeping of the gate. I hope my question, at least one of them, will be asked. and I gave her 3. I don't think they were unfair in any way. I will attend, and if there's an opportunity, and I don't feel that the questions are pointed enough for Representative Raskin, then I'll see if there's a point where I can interject. But that will obviously we'll see how that goes. And either way, I'll have some clips for you tomorrow, Friday. All right, the poll here, again, I mentioned, really does show the Democrats, I think, in deep doo-doo, right? I mean, this is a party that is one of the 2 major parties. They can't muster more than 31% approval. It's very, very problematic. And again, their response is to, I think their cope is, hey, if we just attack Trump even more, as though we haven't done it enough. I mean, when you go through the record, the only thing they've ever done is try to, marginalize him, diminish him. You can say, well, Trump brought a lot on himself. And I don't disagree that many of his policies have been terrible. But the problem is the Democrats don't attack him for the really bad policies, specifically, and worst of all, the immigration policy. In fact, they doubled down. They doubled down on it. Remember, during the campaign, Kamala mocked Trump for not building the wall, for not doing enough to keep immigrants out. So this is not an opposition party in any meaningful way. It's not a party that's opposing billionaire control. It's just they want their billionaires. And that's exactly what we heard from the new boss. Yesterday, I played the clip. I think we played it a couple for Arlen and Fred. So the new boss there, Ken, what is his name, from the former Minnesota Democratic Party chair? I forget his name, Ken, whatever. He doesn't represent any real change in Democratic policy. So therefore, or procedures really in this case, which is taking money from people who are directly impacting on policy that is fluid, right? Democratic Party policy is fluid depending on who's writing checks. That is a huge, huge, huge part of the problem. Okay. 31% approval for Dems, 46, 43, something like that for Trump. Let me look at that. That was according to Quinnipiac, a reputable pollster. And if you're wondering whether those numbers are skewed because, it was still relatively shortly after the inauguration, and maybe, latest Trump outrages, Doge, the Hitler salute by, the alleged Hitler. I think, was it a Hitler? It kind of was. I mean, I don't know. People, that kind of symbolism, nobody really gives a crap about. So remember when Republicans tried to make a big deal about how Obama, when he stood for the national anthem, didn't have his hand over his heart, and that was apparently some horrible breach, which it really wasn't. And nobody cared. Nobody cared. That kind of stuff doesn't matter to the American public. And likewise, Musk's pretty probably apparent nod to Nazism isn't really going to go very far as a campaign issue for Democrats. And you can see here Trump's approval, according to 538, and this is a composite, so they take all these different polls and they have some, machine, and they put all the data in and it spits out a number or 2 numbers, whatever, a composite. And the answer, according to 538, is Trump's approval now 48.8. I think he's been over 50, maybe once or twice, but 48, 49, roughly 49%, rough disapproval, 44%. So there it is, 4.7% more Americans, according to that projection, 4.7% more Americans approve of Trump than disapprove. And according to Quinnipiac, 16% of Americans net disapprove of Democrats. So what should Democrats do? And, I posed this. I said, hey, one thing they shouldn't do at least not without some pretty strong, powerful evidence of a high crime or misdemeanor that's going to outrage the American public, the last thing they should be talking about is impeachment. It looks so ridiculous, right? I mean, doesn't it? You can't get what you want legislatively. You can't get what you want electorally. And the Democrats have tried every legal trick in the book, right? The whole lawfare thing, let's ban Trump from the ballot. I worked on that. For our revolution, was like hey, he's an insurrectionist, he shouldn't be allowed on the ballot. And wasn't a completely frivolous argument. It really wasn't. There was, a case. I don't think it should have prevailed personally, but I thought it was not a frivolous, it wasn't foolish to say, hey, he did, try to overthrow the government of the United States, and you can't do that. And I thought the best evidence for that wasn't really January 6th, but January 6th was kind of a culmination, but it was really the groundwork laid beforehand, trying to persuade secretaries of various states and other election officials to throw out the ballots. When there was zero evidence of any kind of malfeasance or misfeasance or negligence or anything. I mean, Trump just simply lost in 2000. He simply lost. More voters clearly preferred Biden, and in the enough states with enough electoral votes for Biden to win. So that was a horrible, horrible thing that Trump did. That and the immigration. I mean, clearly anti-democratic, clearly wrong, misguided. So I was a part of that campaign. I didn't want it. In the end, I thought it was misguided, mainly because I think that people should get to decide who their leaders are, absent some really egregious crime, which Trump was close to, right? But we've seen lots of egregious crimes in the White House. So, if the American public decide they want Trump to be their president, then that's their decision. And that's what the American public decide in 2024. So if you're a Democrat, I think you deal with that and you say, well, why is this? What happened? What can we do to change this dynamic? I don't think the Democrats have an answer to that, mainly because they're paid not to have the answer. The answer is we promote true pro-worker, pro-environment, pro-economic justice policies. But they don't have that answer because they're bought and paid for by those very same billionaires that Ken, whatever his name is, the new Democratic Party chief, extols as the good billionaires, right? There are billionaires, so they're good billionaires, I guess. But he can't buck them. So since we can't win by making a Bernie Sanders style progressive populist approach to the working people of this country and to the voters more generally, we'll try everything else, which includes impeachment. And I, said, no, I don't think this is a good idea. So response on Facebook to that post was what I already alluded to, which is simply the problem is they're not fighting hard enough. They're not fighting back. I say impeachment now, impeachment tomorrow, impeachment forever. You will see if the Democrats do this, and then goes on to add, oh, great job. Michigan voters who voted for Jill Stein, you voted for the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. I guess you did too. So a dig at me, right? Oh, how dare you? All right, so let's, we'll talk about Gaza a little more, because I yesterday probably provided about the strongest defense of what Trump announced with Bibi that I've seen online. Maybe, and I started watching Glenn Greenwald because I really respect his opinion. Not 100%. I think he's frankly, he's a little bit of a Trump apologist, and I don't like that. But I was getting the sense that Greenwald sees this the same way I do, which certainly gave me some sense of comfort, of some sense of satisfaction, because when everyone's against you, when you're seeing so many people saying, oh, this is so awful what Trump is saying, how terrible, he's calling for ethnic cleansing, he's going to finish the job that the Israelis and Harris Biden started, you start to question yourself. And I do that. I certainly question myself. But, I was glad to see that Greenwald had a far more nuanced take. As far as I could tell, I didn't watch very much of his clip. I didn't really have time. But he seemed to have a more nuanced take than everyone else, except for me. So I was glad to see that. That did make me feel somewhat or significantly vindicated. And we'll see, as time goes on. But to argue that somehow because Trump is, in my view, clearly trying to prevent the Israeli genocide from ramping up again, as he announced yesterday, and I think he's really caught in a tough spot because of what, let me say it this way, if Trump really doesn't want that killing to resume, which it almost certainly would be continuing, right? I mean, I think it's astonishing to me that anyone could look at what Trump announced yesterday and say, well, this justified voting for Harris, or because of this, you should have voted for Harris. Hey, if Harris were still had been elected, we probably would see several thousand more dead Gazans than we are now. So I can't possibly see how that's a justification. And again, I think Trump's in a very, very tough spot. If he called for what I think he should call for, which is, we're going to have the United Nations come in, we're going to have troops coming in, we're going to protect Gaza, and we're going to ultimately create a one-state solution, he would be immediately, he would lose all support in Congress. The Republicans just simply could not put up with that. They would not just allow that. And obviously the Democrats wouldn't have his back in any way. So I think he is doing what he can to try to keep killing from resuming and kicking the can down the road a little bit. Is it a perfect answer? No, but it's probably about as good as he can come up with. And I'm going to, before I get to this impeachment stuff, let me just go for what the Hill is saying here, or that Democrats are saying in response to Trump. So we won't spend a ton of time on this, but because I think the impeachment is more important, and I think, but they go together too, to a degree. Dems ripped Trump Gaza takeover plan, openly calling for ethnic cleansing. I don't think he really was. He said that you can't live there anymore. We're going to try to provide a temporary place for Gazans. And at some points he said, hey, they'll like it. They're not going to want to go back to Gaza. But he also said clearly, this is for the Palestinian people. So we'll see. I think time will tell. But at least I'm not reporting every day 50 more dead, 47 more dead, 83 more dead, all killed by the Israeli military. At least I'm not reporting that. Dems slam Trump, openly calling for ethnic cleansing. Here's the thing. I went through this article. They quote Rashida Tlaib, who I think has some real cred. They quote Chris Van Hollen, who I actually think has some real cred on this issue. And yet they had no alternatives. They didn't say, well, this is what he should be doing instead. This is what we would recommend he do instead. This is a better plan. I think you got an absolute obligation. If you're going to criticize Trump's call for rebuilding Gaza and removing for now the Gazan people from there, what's your solution? What's your alternative? What would you call for instead? And there's been nothing. They haven't had any thoughts, any suggestions, any ideas, because they know as well, meaning Van Hollen, meaning Tlaib, meaning Gregory Meeks, right, who's trying to cut off and successfully held up $1 billion in material. They know that anything they would suggest would be greeted immediately with hoots and rocked with laughter. The idea that, oh, we're going to... And Neil Stanage, I believe is his name, not Stanage, I don't know, Neil something or other, who's on the Hill, he was talking about this. He said that the answer is the folks who are in Gaza need to be able to stay in Gaza while we rebuild. And I'm not sure that's possible. It may be, but so much of that area seems completely uninhabitable. But even if you did say, even if that was the proposal, and even if it were possible, Israel would completely reject it, and so would Congress. I've heard even comments like, well, if we spend billions and billions and billions to rebuild Gaza, to what end? It's just going to mean there's going to be more attacks by Hamas on Israel, then there'll be reprisals by Israel, and there'll just be more deadly waves. Only way out of that is a one-state solution, which, Trump couldn't call for, even if he believed in it, couldn't call for it. So I don't know what alternative you propose if you don't like what Trump is calling for. I have given my solution, but, Harris-Biden clearly rejected that. Their answer was even worse. So if you don't have something better than what Trump is calling for, I think you kind of got to hold your peace. At least until we see how this plays out. 240-242-5646. 240-242-5646. Yeah, so there's Al Green. He is a Congress member from Texas, and he brought several articles of impeachment against Trump during the first term, and now he says he's going to do it again. Now, I was interested, well, what high crime or misdemeanor did Trump commit that you believe justifies impeachment? And his answer is dastardly deeds. Okay, no one likes a dastardly deed, but as far as I know, there's nothing in the criminal code or anywhere else that specifically outlaws dastardly deeds. So what are you basing that impeachment on? Now, I want to just get one other representative, because here's Raskin, and like Green, he doesn't provide any explanation, any specific crime that Trump committed that would justify articles of impeachment. It's very, very brief, but this is getting some play, so let's at least hear it.
How many Republicans do we need to impeach him, and who are the most likely that will switch?
Well, right now it's 218 to 215. So if you can find me 2 Republicans, I'll go to work tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, so you can see him smirking. There's the Raskin smirk, the smile that we all know him for. And he says, hey, I just need 2 Republicans. Fine. What are you going to charge Trump with? What specific crime are you going to go with? Because I mean, it's nice to say, but I didn't hear anything illegal in his speech about Gaza. There's lots of illegal things that presidents do. But if you're just going to say dastardly deeds, or just give me 2 Republicans and I'll get to work on it, it's hollow, it's performative, it's meaningless. And the American people can see right through it. It's a complete waste. It's a waste of time, energy, and effort. It's counterproductive. It makes us all think of you as unserious. Now, what Raskin could be doing, what Green could be doing, is saying, hey, this is what Trump should follow. This is the way he should respond to the ethnic cleansing that Israel committed with the full backing, the full commitment of Harris-Biden. That's what he could be talking about, saying this is a better way. This is what we need to do. But he doesn't. He doesn't come up with any. And I'll ask him that tomorrow. If I get a chance, I'm going to say, hey, you talk about impeaching Trump. What specific high crime or misdemeanor are you talking about? And I would follow up with, how come you didn't impeach Joe Biden for very specific crimes, for genocide, for violating the Leahy Act, which says we don't provide aid to countries, we don't provide military support to countries that are denying humanitarian aid. That is a specific law. If we're trying to help people in a country, this is the Leahy law. If we're trying to help people in a particular country and that country prevents us, that government, the government of that country prevents us from providing that assistance, or a government prevents us from providing assistance, we can't give them military support. Well, Israel clearly refused help to the Palestinian people. It used its military to prevent aid from getting to the Palestinian people. We kept giving them weapons. That was a violation of American law. Joe Biden violated that law. Why didn't you impeach him for that, Raskin? Why didn't you impeach, Raskin wasn't in office. I would say to Al Green, why didn't you impeach Barack Obama for denying due process to the people, the American citizens he was droning? Because he killed American citizens. How come you didn't impeach him for that? Some might say, well, just because you don't get the first 10 speeders doesn't mean you get you're not allowed to go after the 11th. And I would agree with that. But so far I've been seeing Trump commit crimes that are on par with, that are even close in terms of severity to the ones I just described. Ongoing supplies of weapons to a country that's denying help, denying aid. You want to charge Trump with that? I would be okay with it, right? I mean, as far as I know, Israel, I don't know if Israel's not preventing us from helping Palestinians right now, probably on the West Bank. I'm sure there are laws we're breaking, and if you want to charge Trump with those, I would not necessarily have a problem with it, but I'd like to know what they are. And I think I would like to know why you didn't charge Joe Biden with those, obviously incredibly serious offenses against the Constitution, against humanity. Because otherwise it just looks like you're just doing it for partisan reasons. You're doing it for power. You have no real convictions. We can go back not too far to find an example of an impeachment that really was wholly justified, and it was set out in very, very clear and specific ways that the president had violated the law. So here's Kucinich in 2008 when Al Green was, in fact, a seated member of Congress from Texas. Dennis Kucinich brought these articles of impeachment against George W. Bush. They were famously taken off the table, by the way, by Nancy Pelosi. Remember, we're not going to impeach him, was what she said. So she got very little support, or rather, Kucinich got very little support for his article of impeachment, even though they were well founded. This was when Bush was a lame duck and he wasn't going anywhere. But there still would have been, I think, real value in charging him. I think it would have really set a precedent. You come up with phony precedents for war and you torture people and you lie to Congress. Yeah, you were going to impeach you at some point. So here are the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think, 9 reps who, there are 10 co-sponsors, 11. I don't know how many. I don't have the whole list. Let me see if I can get the whole thing up. This was the entire list that I could find. And this is from Roll Call. So there you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, including my old rep, Sam Farr. I was actually living in Farr's district at that time, June of 2008, rather. One name you don't see on that list, you do see a Texan, Sheila Jackson Lee. You don't see Al Green. Now, I'm not going to go after him too hard. He was still a relatively young Congress member. But this is a guy who loves to impeach. So why didn't you join the impeachment of W when there was such a strong case? And just so you see what a strong case of impeachment looks like, as opposed to the ones brought against Trump, the specifics with respect to W are very, very strong. So he illegally spent public dollars on a secret propaganda program to manufacture a false cause for war against Iraq. That's right. Remember, there was no yellow cake uranium sale in Niger to Iraq. It didn't happen. It was just phony. And there were no weapons of mass destruction. He did misuse intelligence reports to deceive Congress. He did mislead Congress and the public into believing that Iran, I've been through all this, illegally spent funds to begin the war before it was even authorized by Congress. So you look at all this and you think, well, this is a case. This is how you impeach somebody. Invaded Iraq in violation of U.S. law. And on and on. And these are only 10 of the many. There were approximately 20. Invaded Iraq to control its oil resources. So again, lots and lots of very specific crimes by W. And yet this is a president now that's been rehabilitated. Kamala used his vice president's daughter, Torture Dick's daughter, as her, quasi-ersatz running mate rather than Tim Walz. Democrat Party doesn't deserve our support. We have to go in a different direction. The problem is that, again, Democrats have created this horrific crisis in Gaza. And now they have no solution to it. So they attack Trump. That's not leadership. That's not going to make you more popular. That's not going to get you out of the toilet when it comes to the perception of you by the American public. Nor should it. This is not a fault of the voter. This does not reflect some moral failing of the American people. This reflects a corrupt party that hypocritically pretends to be on the side of the working people, but really governs in absolutely monstrous ways for the benefit of the billionaire class. And that's why we don't have a democracy. You want freedom, you want peace, you want something better for your kids, for yourself, gotta support an alternative to this duopoly, to this corrupt caucusocracy that we. So Trump's argument, and he was very clear about it, for finding some place, at least temporarily, for Gazans to go is you can't live there anymore. It's just not habitable. And in fact, that seems very, very clear. Just from Al Jazeera. Severe storm adds to misery in Gaza. Now, I think the argument you would make against what Trump said, the strongest argument is, well, look at this. Israel's now planning for emigration. They're trying to figure out ways to push the Gazans out. They want Gazans out. They don't want them to come back. Do I think it's going to happen that way? I really don't. I really hope it doesn't. But I will say right now, Gaza's not habitable. And, they need 600 trucks a day minimum to get in there, to provide sort of a bare bones existence. How long can that last? I don't know. It may well be sensible to have some kind of relocation, at least temporarily, Of course, Israel wants it to be permanent. Trump has actually, rejected that idea. We'll see what happens. 240-242-5646. 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to you. Yeah, Clueless Dems shoot themselves in the head. That is the title. I don't think there's any question. Here's Jasmine Crockett. She got I guess a lot of Dems liked what she had to say here. This was posted on Halitics as a example, right, of Dems fighting back. We've got to fight back. So here's what she has to say.
I am tired of the white tears. Listen, if you are competent, you are not concerned. When I walk into Congress...
Right, so she's saying this on CNN. And I guess she's responding to some of the cuts to funding, especially for historical black colleges and universities. And also, again, no more DEI. That's what she's responding to. So she's tired of the white tears. What a terrible way to start, right? I mean, why would you... I can't even believe this would be popular in her district. You're talking about many Americans who are really suffering because of policies that your party, as well as the Republican Party, have pursued. They're human beings. Some are your constituents. It seems so if nothing else, if beyond insensitive, incredibly self-defeating. You're calling out voters? Wow.
Every single day. You know why I don't feel away and why you can't make me doubt who I am is because I know that I had to work 10 times as hard as they did just to get into the seat. When you look...
All right, so I'm going to stop it there for a second. I guess she's sort of talking about her fellow Congress members when she's saying white tears. I hear her talking about voters who don't agree with DEI, who don't agree with, race-based solutions. If that's not what she's saying, she needs to be very, very clear. But she also says there, I know I had to work 10 times as hard. See, I think when people say things like that, I don't know that they believe what they're saying. I think she's just trying to come up with justification for policies that are not popular, that did not win over the American public, including a majority of brown men, based on exit polls. People don't want solutions to inequality, to inequity, based on targeting on race. They just don't. We don't want that. What we want, I believe strongly, is targeting based on need, targeting based on fairness, basic justice. You can make a really strong argument for historical black colleges and universities to be funded, and I think they should be. But the way you make that argument is to say, hey, we're going to fund, educational institutions that educate people who are struggling economically. We're going to make sure that everyone can get a debt-free education. Regardless of your race, you'll get a debt-free education. And one way that we have seen that is really helpful is for people of color is to fund HBCUs. That's not the only funding we're going to provide, of course, but it will form a significant amount of it. That's fine. She doesn't say that.
And you compare me to Marjorie Taylor Greene or me to Lauren Boebert, there is no comparison. And that is the life that we have always lived. So the only people that are crying are the mediocre white boys that have been beaten out by people that historically have had to work so. So
is her point that if you're, in her view, a mediocre white boy, you don't deserve health care? You don't deserve a job that pays decent wages. You don't deserve a debt-free education. It's clear that's what she seems to be saying. And that's how you lose elections. That's why your rating is at 31%.
This is why they don't want us to have education. This is why they are trying to literally say we won't fund the HBCUs, because they know that if they've already gone after affirmative action and they're saying, you know what, don't allow them to come into, say, these PWIs, as we call them.
Well, so she's saying predominantly white institutions won't can no longer factor in race when making admissions decisions, and that has already, we've seen, reduced significantly, at least in many schools, the percentage who are black of admittees. And that's an issue. I agree. That is a problem. But it's not, I mean, it's still colorblind in the sense that we're looking at objective standards, GPAs, test scores, essays. Funding HBCUs is incredibly important. We should fund them. She has every right to be angry. But her argument is so off-putting and so unlikely to persuade anyone who doesn't agree with her to begin with. And in fact, will put many people, will turn off people who might otherwise say, yeah, we should fund HBCUs.
Allow them to come into these institutions. We know why they created the HBCUs in the first place. It was because they wouldn't allow us into the white institutions. And so now they're not allowing us in. And now they're saying, you know what, we're also going to defund the HBCUs. You know why? Because they don't want any more Kamala Harrises. They don't want any more Jasmine Crockett's.
All right. I think that's just clearly false. But the last statement, the elites in this country love the Kamala Harrises. They were all in for Kamala Harris. And the statements by Jasmine Crockett are exactly what elites want, because they pit people against each other based on race. They prevent a broad coalition of poor, struggling, and working people from uniting, or they certainly make it much, much more difficult. The Democrat Party is going to town with that statement. They posted it. They love what Crockett has to say. I think it's because it has led, and this is what I heard on the Hill, to more fundraising. People are giving. They're saying, oh yeah, we love what Jasmine had to say. We support Jasmine Crockett. So, yeah, upper middle class people who have a little disposable money, they're comfortable with that kind of racially antagonistic dialogue. But it's not the solution. The solution is we build a multiracial, multi-ethnic, working class coalition that addresses all economic injustice, regardless who people are, regardless of their innate characteristics. What Crockett did does just the opposite. And again, I put this quote up, but this stuff never gets old. You are kept apart that you may be separately fleeced of your earnings. You're made to hate each other because upon that hatred is rested the keystone of the arch of financial despotism, which enslaves you both. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. What Jasmine Crockett says pits black people and white people against each other. And by doing that, she's empowering the rich and powerful and enriching the wealthy. Empowering the powerful and enriching the wealthy. I think there's something to what she said. I don't think it's complete nonsense, but the way it's presented is so counterproductive. there's no way it's going to change numbers. It's going to move the dial for the Democrats. Trump's getting a lot of criticism for calling to shut down U.S. aid. And again, we're seeing I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? A concerted movement by Democratic elites who get money from USAID to defend a program that has actually done a lot of harm. Now, if you want to defend the good things it's done, fine. But there seems to be, again, no acknowledgement, and this is why Americans are so sick of government, so disgusted with both parties. There's no acknowledgement of the problems that U.S. aid is causing and how it is wasting taxpayer money. So here's, or worse, causing harm by its spending.
People watching that part of the funding for what has been criticized as dangerous scientific research in Wuhan, China, was done not just by NIAID, the NIH, the other funding agencies, but was done by USAID for EcoHealth Alliance. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, it's interesting because the White Coat Waste Project is an organization that works to stop taxpayer-funded animal torture. The U.S. government is actually the top funder of animal torture in the world. And so they inadvertently got caught up in this entire mess a few years ago when they happened to be tracing gain-of-function research and found that it was illegally happening in the Wuhan lab because gain-of-function research is animal torture. And so they started ringing the alarm.
So basically, let me just stop it. Fauci is funding through, NIH, because he was one of the directors of NIH, not the head, but he was of that type of research, the head of it. They were funding gain of function in Wuhan, and they were torturing animals. And it wasn't, just at Wuhan, we saw beagles, the little dogs being tortured. And this was something that Fauci supported. So I found it very, very disgusting, nauseating, all of the pro-Fauci memes out there all the time, like he's some kind of a saint. And it's all partisan. It's just, well, he stood up to Trump. He went after Trump. He criticized Trump. So therefore, he has to be a great person. No, this is, again, why we can't support the Democratic Party any more than the Republicans.
Buried by the mainstream media and by the government for many, many years. So it's been hard getting eyeballs on it. But what's interesting as well, Dr. Fauci and the NIH, the NIAID have caught a lot of the brunt of this, deservedly so. There have been many government agencies that have been doing this exact same kind of funding, and not just before COVID, but after COVID as well. As I pointed out last year, USAID was continuing to give tens of millions of dollars to these very same labs well after the pandemic broke out, and nothing was happening to stop it. And so I think it's interesting to watch the weeping and gnashing of teeth by Democrats who claim to care about stopping public health disasters, who claim to care about things like animal torture, coming in and rabidly defending this organization. And really, this is just the tip of the iceberg. What the White Coat Waste Project discovered about USAID is how it operates in a myriad of sectors. They essentially take our dollars, they pass them through quote, quote, nonprofits that are nonprofits in name only. Those government contracts then get handed out through those nonprofits to people who are well connected. And it's just a way for them to launder money for their friends and inadvertently get it back in their own pockets. So,
all right. So, there's really, she said it so clearly, so well. Neither party can be trusted. They are both the party of billionaires. And the use of U.S. aid money to fund gain of function research, which could prove, if it were successful, a bonanza for for-profit healthcare, but it turned out to be an absolute worldwide catastrophe, is a perfect example of how we must go away. We must move away from this unitary party, this duopoly. It's just, it couldn't be clearer. And why people don't get it, I only can say I must do a poor job explaining because it couldn't be clearer. So I must just not be good at presenting the case. We hear a lot, by the way, of how bad Elon Musk is, and I have real problems with this. I mean, what's his Department of Government? He doesn't have to get, he has a tremendous power, tremendous influence over Trump. He wasn't appointed. He's not going for congressional approval. I don't get what his even, role, his title is. He's just some sort of informal advisor. And that's very, very problematic. So Musk's access to Treasury's payment system is ranging alarms. Here's what to know. I read through this article from CBS News. I thought it was pretty clear. It was pretty, because I really haven't focused on this, to be perfectly honest with you. I thought it was pretty clear. I thought it was pretty accurate as far as I could tell. And is somewhat less alarmist. But that doesn't make any of this okay. You've got an unelected man wielding tremendous influence power. This is a billionaire who has no qualifications to do this, and except that they're friends with Trump. So one major concern with all the access that, and I think a legitimate concern that Musk has, is from Donald Sherman from Crew, which is a very, very reputable, very, very credible group that has launched investigations into both parties, has been very critical of both parties, has real cred by doing that. And their concern is that there's this personally identifiable information which Musk has access to and he could use for his own benefit in various ways. Target people that are viewed as enemies, reward people. It's terrible. It's very frightening. There are quite real risks that Doge could potentially undermine various systems, especially payment systems like Medicare, like Medicaid, like Social Security, and threaten payments. Like employees, government employees. This is all a real risk. And we did see there was a holdup, right? Remember, there was some glitch and checks didn't go out for a day or something. So this isn't just alarmism. Now, the response from Trump, and CBS makes this point, is wait a second. You're saying there's all this personally identifiable information. But according to the Treasury Department, Doge will only have read-only access, so they can't actually stop the payments. They can only see what's going out. They can't actually stop it. That's what the letter from the Treasury Department suggests or says. And I don't know whether, I have no reason to disbelieve that. It wasn't Doge that stopped the payments. That was some sort of a glitch, some sort of tech issue of some sort. Now, Doge could recommend that payments be stopped, and that's worrisome. The letter added that the only access will be coded data. So it won't have your name on it. It won't have identifiers. It'll just give information that can be used to determine how to make payments more efficient. Now that should be reassuring, but it's not necessarily correct. It's not accurate. That Doge will only have or only has access to coded data lacking personal identifiers. And Time magazine, so I think I just went to CBS. Let me go to Time. Time here, and this is the thing I was really curious about, what I wanted from Raskin, what I want from Al Green, is if you're going to impeach Trump, for what? What did he do that's illegal that justifies the time, the effort, the political capital being expended on an impeachment? What did he do? And so, to Time's credit, they do delve into this a little bit. And they try to, they try to explain, and they do, to a degree, explain what, in their view, Trump's doing that is illegal. And if to the extent it's illegal, you want to impeach him for it, go ahead. You might want to be pretty careful not to impeach him for something that 5 other presidents have done in the past 7 administrations, because you'll look awfully hypocritical. But hey, if he's doing something really bad, yeah, I wouldn't have a problem. I don't think impeachment is wrong. One of the concerns is that the data that Musk has access to, and he is not legally entitled to it, is in fact the personal identifiers in the government payment system. That information is supposed to be, is legally private. It's legally classified. It's not for anybody to have, to see. And from the Electronic Privacy Information Center, Alan Butler argues that Doge has more than just access. It's not just coded. And a perfect proof of this, according to Butler, is that there have been posts on X that identify payments. Now, I highlighted this from the Time article. It's very clear that Doge is more than just access, Butler says, citing Musk's recent posts on X, highlighting records of specific payments from private organizations, including Lutheran groups. From Lutheran groups. Now, we'll look at that date in a second. It's not from, it's to. So I was curious about that misquote, or misstatement maybe. Data from those systems is being exfiltrated. They infiltrate the system and they share it and disclosed outside the Treasury Department, which is a quintessential violation of the Privacy Act. You're taking personal data and disclosing it in unauthorized ways. So what is that personal data? I went back and looked at it, and I was actually not upset that it was posted. Maybe I should be. I hope you can read this because it's in small print. And I don't know, I find this not believable. I truly don't. If you look at these numbers here, different groups with the word Lutheran in it are getting millions and millions and millions of dollars in very short periods of time. So according to this post, this cannot possibly be right. The Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service Incorporated, located in the Maryland 7th Congressional District, I'm not sure who the rep is in Maryland 7, is receiving many millions of dollars, including on 12/30, $140 million. And there are other enormous payments, $97 million. It says the awarding agency is the Department of Health and Human Services. And between 12/18 and 12/30/24, they paid over $200 million to Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. That doesn't sound plausible to me. But if it is, I'm glad it's posted. I want to know about that. That seems like an incredible waste of taxpayer money. That can't be legal. $200 million to one service? What are they spending that on? I mean, what am I missing? Is there something that this could be, that could justify those payments? It's hard for me to imagine. I'll do some research, but I was just flummoxed. I was just amazed. 3 payments totaling $200+ million to one group in Maryland CD7, the Lutheran Immigration Refugee Service. At the very end of the Biden lame duck session. Well, we'll find out. Maybe we'll find out. We'll get some more information about that. I'm looking forward to discussing it with you. Tomorrow's the free-for-all. Thanks so much for watching. Halitics. I hope you'll join me going forward. I hope you'll be part of Halitics. Don't forget, click like, click subscribe, and join us on Facebook. I didn't put the Facebook crawl up today, but it's there. We're still there on Facebook at Halitics.